Hello again, Algebra 1 students. We are in our Unit 3, Week 2, Family of Functions syllabus. We are in Tier 2, Lesson 1, Domain and Range of a Line Segment. So let's check off our booklet. So here we are in Domain and Range of line segments. And I want to remind you that when we're dealing with domain, we're looking at x values only. And when we're dealing with range, we're looking at y values only. And there's a couple different ways to write domain and range. We have inequality notation, which is something I think you guys are a little familiar with. And then we have interval notation, which I kind of introduced in the last lesson, but I didn't really explain to you what I was doing. I just kind of showed it to you because I like kind of doing that, working through it. And then now I'm going to explain it to you in more depth. Well, let's talk about our x values of this line segment down here. So remember, our x values are right here. They're on the x-axis, and this line touches x values from here, where the line starts, to where the line ends. These are the x values that this line segment touch. But as we can look at it, this line touches from -3 to +1 of the x values. So in inequality notation is we're going to say that this line segment that starts at -3 and this line segment that ends at +1, okay? And then all the other values of this line segment are x's, and we don't know what they're going to be. They're any x that we can plug in from -3 to 1. But we know that the x has to be greater than or equal to -3 because of where the line segment ends. There's nothing to the left of -3. And also where the line segment ends is at 1, so there's nothing to the right of 1. The x values have to be less than or equal to +1. So now I want to do the range values before I show you the interval notation. So the range, remember, is again the y values. And if I come down here and I shade where this line touches the y values, which here are my y values, I can see that this line touches y values that start at -3 and it stops touching the y values because right here. I can see that it starts touching the y values right here at -3 and stops touching the y values up here at +1. And remember, when we're dealing with range, we read bottom up. Because the lower number, -infinity, is all the way at the bottom, and the positive, the biggest number, is all the way at the top, +infinity. With my inequality notation, I know that my lowest y value in my range can be only -3. And I also know that my highest y value in my range has to be +1, and that my x has to be in between those. I don't know whatever x value I pick on this line, but it has to be between those. And x is greater than or equal to -3 because -3 is included. And also, 1 is included, so x is less than or equal to 1. And that is how you write the inequality notation. Now, with interval notation, it's a little different. Whenever a value is included, I'm going to write this off to the side. Whenever a value is included, it gets brackets like this. Shrink that. Whenever a value is not included, it gets parentheses. So let me show you what that means. So because -3 and +1 are included in our domain value, then our interval notation would be in brackets, and it would just be simply -3 to 1. Now, if -3 and +1 were not included, it would get parentheses. And here are my range values. -3 and 1 are included, so it gets brackets, and that would be my interval notation. Most mathematicians use interval notation because it's easier to write, it's quicker. I suggest you do that, but if you do inequality, I get it, and I can roll with that too. So let's go look at this other line segment. So with domain, we're going to look at only the x values. So here's my x, and if I draw out, here's the line, I come down to the x, my first x value that I possibly can have is 0, and then here's where the line segment ends. I come up, there's my x, the largest x value I can have is 2. So my domain inequality notation goes 0 to 2, and I know that my x has to be in between it, and my 0 and 2 are included in my line segment, so x is greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 2, and how I would write that in interval notation is I would have a bracket, 0 because it's included, 2 bracket because 2 is included. Let's look at the range. When I'm dealing with range, I'm looking at only the y values. So with my y values, here's my line. Well, it's kind of cool because my line touches the y value at 3 positive, and down here my lowest y value is -3. And remember, we read range bottom to top, so I would start with this one. So my inequality notation would have -3. I know I'm going to have an x in there, and then it's going to stop up here at the top, which is +3. So on this line segment, because my negative 3 is included, negative x is going to be greater than or equal to the negative 3, and x is going to be less than or equal to the positive 3 because the positive 3 is included. And how I would write this in interval notation is I'd use a bracket because they're included, and negative 3 to positive 3, and that is my interval notation. Again, this is some new stuff. Lots of new stuff probably for you guys, but some old stuff too. But what I want you to do is if you struggle with it, ask a neighbor, get some help. If your neighbor and you can figure it out together, then come see me while I'm doing quiz corrections and I'll do my best to help you. Good luck on your problem sets.